Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Ancient Epics, the place where the greatest stories of humanity come back to life. Long before the world learned to fear the so-called curse of a modern excavation, ancient Egypt had already etched warnings into stone with chilling clarity. Hidden deep within tomb corridors, carved upon false doors and burial chambers sealed with desert silence, were words meant not to frighten the living world, but to guard the eternal order of the dead. These were not legends born of later imagination. They were written by the hands of priests, scribes, and craftsmen who believed language itself held divine power. A single sentence, correctly shaped, could protect a soul for millions of years or destroy any who dared to disturb it. Some curses promised blindness, madness, or death by crocodile and serpent. Others threatened the erasure of a name, a fate more terrifying than death itself in Egyptian belief. These inscriptions were placed beneath tons of limestone and sand, unseen for centuries, waiting in darkness. When later generations finally uncovered them, the warnings appeared uncannily precise, describing punishments that mirrored real dangers of the Nile Valley. Thus began one of the most haunting chapters of ancient history, the curses of the tombs, born not from superstition, but from a civilization that believed the universe was governed by balance, order, and consequence. In the worldview of ancient Egypt, the tomb was not a resting place but a gateway. Death marked a transformation rather than an ending, and the preservation of the body, name, and memory was essential for the soul's survival. This eternal journey was guided by Mat, the cosmic principle of truth, balance, and justice. Any disruption to a burial threatened that delicate harmony. Tomb curses emerged as guardians of this sacred order, inscribed to repel those who would steal offerings, deface names, or violate the resting place of the dead. The earliest known tomb curses date back to the Old Kingdom more than 4,000 years ago. At Saqqara, near the stepped pyramid of Djoser, officials carved warnings into their mastaba tombs. One inscription belonging to an official named Kentika declared that anyone who entered his tomb in an impure state would be judged by the great god and stripped of protection in the afterlife. Another threatened that the crocodile and hippopotamus would devour the offender, animals well known along the Nile for sudden and violent attacks. These were not poetic exaggerations but realistic fears rooted in the environment of ancient Egypt. The Nile Valley shaped both life and belief. Crocodiles lurked in slow-moving waters, while venomous snakes hid among reeds and desert rocks. Tomb curses often invoked these creatures as instruments of divine justice. The words carved into stone were believed to activate supernatural forces, calling upon gods such as Anubis, guardian of the necropolis, or Osiris, lord of the underworld. The curse did not act alone. It was a legal appeal to the cosmic court of the gods. Hieroglyphs themselves were sacred. Each sign was considered a living symbol infused with Heka, the divine force of magic. Writing a curse was not merely a warning. It was an act of creation. Priests carefully selected words and symbols, ensuring the threat was precise and enduring. Some inscriptions avoided depicting dangerous animals fully, fearing that a complete image might bring them to life. Even in curses, restraint and reverence were maintained. During the Middle Kingdom, tomb curses grew more elaborate. Burial chambers expanded deeper into cliffs and desert plateaus, especially at sites like Beni Hasan and Thebes. Here, inscriptions promised that violators would lose their inheritance, suffer illness, or be denied burial rights for themselves. In Egyptian belief, dying without proper rites condemned the soul to wander, unable to join the eternal fields of reeds. This punishment struck at the core of cultural identity and spiritual hope. Astronomy also played a subtle role in these beliefs. The afterlife was associated with the stars, particularly the circumpolar stars that never set, known as the imperishable ones. Pharaohs and nobles alike sought to join these eternal lights. Tombs were aligned with celestial patterns, shafts pointing toward the northern sky. A curse that severed this cosmic journey was considered devastating. Some texts warned that the stars would turn their faces away from the offender, leaving the soul lost in darkness. By the time of the New Kingdom, when Egypt reached the height of its power, tomb curses appeared alongside complex funerary texts such as the Pyramid texts and later the Book of the Dead. These writings were not curses themselves but guides for navigating the afterlife. Yet even here, warnings remained. In the Valley of the Kings, where pharaohs were buried beneath layers of rock, the threat was less visible but no less present. The secrecy of these tombs served as the ultimate deterrent, reinforced by divine consequence rather than public inscription. The landscape surrounding these tombs added to their aura. The western desert, where the sun set and the dead were buried, was a realm of silence and stone. Limestone cliffs glowed red at dusk, and wadis cut deep scars through the land. Tomb builders carved chambers into this living rock, sealing them with mud plaster and stone doors. Beyond these barriers lay darkness untouched by light, air, or sound. Any intrusion was immediately felt as a violation of sacred space. Archaeological evidence shows that tomb robbery was a real and persistent problem even in ancient times. Records from Deir el-Medina, the village of royal tomb workers, describe trials of thieves who violated burials during periods of political instability. Curses, therefore, were not symbolic alone. They were part of a broader system of deterrence that included guards, hidden entrances, and legal punishment. Yet the curse addressed what human law could not, the unseen realm. Unlike later sensational tales, ancient Egyptian curses rarely promised instant death. Instead, they threatened long-term suffering, divine judgment, and spiritual annihilation. The most feared punishment was the destruction of one's name. Without a name, the soul could not receive offerings or be remembered. Some curses declared that the offender's name would be erased from memory, a fate worse than physical death. These inscriptions reveal a civilization deeply concerned with moral order. The curse was not blind vengeance, but a response to injustice. Only those who acted with impurity, greed, or malice were targeted. The righteous had nothing to fear. In this way, tomb curses mirrored Mat itself, balancing the scales between the living and the dead. As desert sands shifted over centuries, many of these warnings remained hidden, their words preserved in darkness. When rediscovered, they appeared as whispers from another age, calm yet severe, reminding the world that ancient Egypt did not fear death, but disorder. The curse was a final line of defense, etched in stone, spoken in silence, and believed to echo for eternity. As centuries passed and dynasties rose and fell, the belief in tomb curses evolved alongside Egyptian society itself. These inscriptions became mirrors reflecting political stability, religious reform, and the changing relationship between humans and the divine. While the Old Kingdom curses were stern and direct, later periods infused them with richer theology and deeper symbolism, embedding them within an ever-expanding vision of the afterlife. During the New Kingdom, Egypt's Golden Age, royal tombs were hidden rather than announced. The Valley of the Kings lay carved into a desolate wadi on the west bank of the Nile, surrounded by jagged cliffs that resembled natural pyramids. Here, curses were rarely carved at entrances. Instead, protection came from secrecy, ritual magic, and the presence of guardian deities painted along the walls. Images of serpents, fire-breathing cobras, and knife-wielding gods filled the corridors, serving as silent threats. In Egyptian thought, an image was never merely decorative. To depict a guardian was to summon its protective power. Within these royal tombs appeared spells designed to repel intruders. Some texts described fiery lakes that would burn the enemies of the king. Others showed deities binding and striking figures labeled as chaos or enemies. These scenes were not aimed at any specific living individual, but at any force that dared disrupt the divine order. The tomb itself became a cosmic battleground where order eternally triumphed over chaos. One of the most striking examples comes from the tomb of Pharaoh Unas, whose pyramid texts include passages describing the annihilation of hostile forces. Though these texts were meant to empower the king's soul, their presence also served as an implicit warning. Any who entered unlawfully risked becoming aligned with chaos, the eternal enemy of Mat. Such alignment carried consequences beyond the physical realm. Scientific study of tomb environments reveals another layer of meaning behind the curses. Sealed chambers often contain dangerous conditions, toxic molds, stagnant air, and harmful bacteria. While ancient Egyptians lacked modern microbiology, they understood that disturbing a tomb could bring illness. Some curses warned of sickness or breath being stolen, language that eerily aligns with real dangers present in unopened burial spaces. The curse thus bridged observed reality and spiritual explanation. Astronomy continued to shape funerary beliefs. Ceilings of tombs were painted with stars, constellations, and the nightly journey of the sun god Rhea through the underworld. The tomb was aligned with cosmic cycles, and to violate it was to interfere with the movement of the heavens. Certain curses reference the sun refusing to rise for the offender or the moon hiding its face, symbolic of cosmic rejection rather than literal disaster. Beyond royal burials, private tombs of priests and officials also carried protective texts. In Thebes, inscriptions warned against stealing funerary offerings such as bread, beer, and incense. These offerings sustained the ka, the life force of the deceased. Theft was therefore not simple robbery but spiritual violence. Curses promised that the thief's own sustenance would fail, crops would wither, and lineage would end. In an agrarian society dependent on Nile floods and seasonal cycles, such threats struck deeply. Archaeological finds show that many tomb curses were never triggered in a dramatic sense. Instead, they functioned as moral boundaries. The presence of a curse reminded visitors, including priests performing rituals, to approach with purity and respect. Ritual cleanliness was essential. Entering a tomb without proper purification was believed to anger the gods as much as outright theft. The famous modern association of curses with sudden death emerged much later, particularly after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. Ancient Egyptian texts themselves did not predict newspaper headlines or mysterious accidents, yet the ancient worldview allowed for indirect consequence. A disturbed tomb disrupted balance, and imbalance inevitably sought correction. This correction might come through illness, misfortune, or divine judgment, unfolding over time rather than in a single dramatic moment. Inscriptions sometimes invoked specific gods as enforcers. Anubis, jackal-headed guardian of embalming and burial grounds, was frequently named. So too was Thoth, god of wisdom and writing, who recorded deeds in the afterlife. To call upon Thoth was to ensure that the crime would never be forgotten, recorded eternally in divine memory. The offender would face judgment not only in life but beyond death. Natural geography reinforced these beliefs. The desert cliffs surrounding necropolises were unstable, prone to collapse. Rockfalls and sudden cave-ins were real dangers. A curse warning that the earth would swallow the violator was not mere metaphor. It reflected the genuine peril of entering sacred spaces without knowledge or care. Some curses also addressed future generations. They warned descendants not to alter the tomb or remove inscriptions. Memory was sacred and continuity across time was essential. To erase a name or reuse a tomb was to sever the chain connecting past, present, and future. Curses ensured that even centuries later, reverence would remain. The language of these texts was carefully balanced. Violence was promised, but always justified. The curse acted as a guardian, not a predator. It defended the deceased, upheld mat, and reinforced communal values. In this way, tomb curses served society as much as the dead. As dynasties weakened and foreign powers entered Egypt, belief in these protections persisted. Even under Greek and Roman rule, Egyptian funerary customs continued, blending old traditions with new influences. Curses remained, though sometimes written in Demotic script rather than hieroglyphs. The essence endured. The dead must be protected and cosmic order must be preserved. Today, scholars read these inscriptions not as threats, but as windows into a civilization that understood the power of words, the sanctity of rest, and the fragile balance between worlds. The curses were not cries of fear, but declarations of confidence in a universe governed by justice. Beneath layers of sand and time, these ancient warnings still exist, carved into stone that has outlasted empires. They speak softly but firmly, reminding all who encounter them that some boundaries were never meant to be crossed, and some silences were meant to endure forever. As time carried Egypt into silence, the tomb curses remained, unmoving and patient, etched into stone beneath drifting sand. Long after temples fell and rituals faded, these inscriptions endured as guardians of a worldview that refused to surrender its meaning. For the ancient Egyptians, the curse was never an act of hatred, but of preservation. It existed to maintain harmony between the living world and the eternal realm beyond the horizon. Modern archaeology has revealed that many tombs bearing curses were never violated at all. Seals remained intact, offerings untouched, names preserved exactly as intended. This quiet success speaks to the effectiveness of belief itself. Fear alone did not protect the tombs. Reverence did. Even those tempted by wealth understood that disturbing the dead risked consequences far greater than earthly gain. The curse was thus both a warning and a moral reminder, standing in place of the deceased long after breath had left the body. Inscriptions sometimes describe the afterlife courtroom where the heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. A curse ensured that anyone who committed injustice against the dead would face judgment with a heavy heart. This imagery reinforced the idea that no action escaped consequence. The gods observed all, and the universe remembered every deed. The curse merely called attention to a law already woven into existence. The materials used to carve these warnings were chosen with care. Limestone, sandstone, and granite were not only abundant but enduring. Granite, quarried from Aswan, was especially valued for its strength. Transported along the Nile by barges, it symbolized permanence. A curse carved into granite was intended to last as long as the stars themselves. Even erosion and time were considered, with deeper carvings ensuring survival across millennia. Hieroglyphic composition followed strict rules. Certain signs were intentionally altered or incomplete, particularly those representing dangerous creatures. A snake might be shown without its head, or a scorpion without its sting. This practice reflected the belief that images possessed life. By limiting the image, the danger was controlled. Even in mourning, restraint governed expression. The natural silence of tomb interiors enhanced the power of these texts. Sound vanished within thick stone walls, and darkness absorbed all movement. The curse did not shout. It waited. Its presence was felt rather than heard, a silent witness guarding the threshold between worlds. This atmosphere reinforced the Egyptian understanding that true power did not need spectacle. Scientific analysis of burial chambers has revealed complex knowledge behind their construction. Air shafts regulated temperature, and stone plugs sealed passages with precision. These architectural choices worked alongside curses to protect the dead. Spiritual belief and engineering were never separate disciplines. Both served the same purpose: eternal continuity. Contrary to later myths, ancient Egyptians did not believe curses acted randomly. Innocence was protection. Those who entered with pure intent, such as priests performing rites, were not targeted. The curse responded only to disruption of mat. This moral clarity distinguished Egyptian curses from later interpretations that portrayed them as blind or malicious. As foreign travelers entered Egypt in antiquity, stories of powerful tomb protection spread. Greek writers spoke of Egyptian magic with awe, recognizing its ancient authority. These accounts, filtered through distance and imagination, contributed to later legends. Yet the original inscriptions remained grounded in ethical balance rather than theatrical fear. The decline of hieroglyphic knowledge during late antiquity sealed these curses in silence once more. Without the ability to read them, later generations passed by unaware of the words carved inches away. The warnings slept, not inactive, but unchallenged. Their power lay not in being read, but in existing. When modern scholars finally deciphered hieroglyphs, the curses emerged into light again. Read carefully, they revealed no rage, only certainty. The universe was ordered. The dead were protected. Justice endured beyond breath. These texts offered insight into a civilization that feared chaos more than death and valued memory above all else. In the end, tomb curses stand as one of ancient Egypt's most misunderstood legacies. They were not expressions of darkness, but of devotion. They protected love for family, respect for ancestors, and faith in cosmic law. They ensured that silence remained sacred and that rest was honored. Even now, beneath desert stars that once guided the souls of kings, these inscriptions remain where they were placed. They wait in stillness, neither threatening nor pleading, simply affirming that some truths were meant to last forever. If these ancient voices touched your heart today, please consider subscribing to Ancient Epics and ringing the bell so you never miss the next forgotten tale. Thanks for watching.